Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vishwaro Guratmeti Murtibeda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satiguru Satiguru Satiguru. Okay, I got stuck. Namaste. Sometimes the disc gets stuck on a little defect. Okay. Page 189, verse 64. There can be no image in the absence of a mirror, for the images are not apart from the mirror. So we are looking to the analogy of consciousness as mirror-like reflecting in the world. Those analogies, projection superimposed on the screen of consciousness, or reflection. So different ways to try to convey that which is incomprehensible to the human intellect. So those are analogies, as we know. So there can be no image in the absence of a mirror reflecting the image. Similarly, nothing is cognizable if it lies beyond the pale of consciousness. So he's saying, so without a mirror, there are no reflections. So without consciousness, which is the cognizing principle, there is no universe reflect at all. There is nothing. Nothing lies beyond consciousness, the same way as no reflections can exist without the mirror. For the same reason, I say that the mind cannot lie apart from intelligence, intelligence consciousness, in the abstract, this intelligence. So the same reason I say that the mind cannot lie, cannot exist apart from consciousness. So I have written a note in the past: the mind contains Sat and Chit aspects of Brahman. So we know that the mind is the Chit aspects of Brahman, but the mind exists, and therefore it contains both aspects of Brahman. And but the whole game here is to recognize that the mind is not only Sat and Chit, aspects of Brahman, but the mind is Ananda. So good insight into the fact that I am is the closest to the understanding that I am limitless as well. You understand? Is the closest to self-realization. So when I have the insight, the clear insight that the mind, I am conscious, a conscious principle. So I am the conscious, the knowing principle of Brahman. And I know that I know that I exist as Chit, as this cognizing principle. So this takes us closer to the recognition that I am Satchitananda, which is the last aspect involving self-recognition. I am Sat, I am Chit, and I am Ananda. Just as the cognizer, cognition, and cognize are identified with the mind in the dreams, so also the seer, the sight, and phenomenon seen are identical with the mind in their wakeful state. So everything is happening in the mind, and the mind is a conscious principle that needs to be properly understood, so that we can resolve the identity of the mind in consciousness as consciousness in all its three aspects, Satchitananda. So the dream world exists within the mind in the dream state, and the phenomenal world exists within the mind in the awakeful state. So it's the same thing. It's all happening in the mind. In the mind is not apart from consciousness. In fact, the mind is consciousness. Just as the X was created, so we have seen that. I just want to recap that one. And then, but Rama, the faculty can only be the same degree of reality as the action it produces. So we have an instrument that does something, and then this instrument must be of the same order reality of anything that it manifests, anything it's useful for. No, any action of the mind, as we have seen in the last passage of our last class. What is the action of the mind here? Is thinking and determining and connecting the dots and all this mental intellectual activity, intellectual mental actions. No? So the mind and its functions, they belong to the same order of reality, which is mithya, seen from one angle, but it needs to be understood its essential nature as satya as well. So for was one injured at the time by anything like a human horn, which is non-existent? No. It may happen in the dream, but not in the wakeful state. So the action and the instrument of action, so the experience and the instrument of experience, they need to belong to the same order of reality. That's why they don't what is real in the dream world is not real in the wakeful world, because they belong to different suborders of mithya. The action itself is unreal, therefore the mind is unreal, the faculty, everything is not real. So that's the logic here. So Rama, there is no faculty known to the mind. Mind is only surmise for the location of the dream subject and the dream objects and so on. Its reality is of the same order as the dream mind as well. Pure intelligence is quite blemished. Mind and other faculties are fabrications for enabling transactions to continue, which, however, go on because the consciousness, the absolute self-conscious, self-sufficient, manifests as duality. What is the most fundamental duality? As we establish every time, the most fundamental duality is the split of consciousness into a subject and an object of experience. So this is the base of duality, the knower and the known, the experiencer and the experienced. The same is often pure and unqualified as in the aforesaid momentary samadhi. And here the author brings again the experiential state of the mind in Nivikalpa Samadhi, in which one can access a certain pure and unmodified state, which is experientially speaking the closest aspect or feature of the true self, pure and unmodified, unqualified. So the momentary samadhis and Nivikalpa Samadhi, the mind is pure, just shining as reflected consciousness. So which is and it is not the same as original consciousness as we know. So in which way the mind is original limitless consciousness, in which way the mind is not original limitless consciousness? Who could answer that? Okay, the mind is the same and it's not the same. That's what we need to understand. The mind is a function, is an instrument, let's say, that produce several phenomena. I mean, it has different functions, and the Jiva has these functions, and then it illumines and experiences the world and gets to cognize and extract some knowledge, good knowledge, bad knowledge. So the mind is doing all of that. So in which way mind is not limitless original consciousness? This mind is colored by the manifestation of Maya, meaning to say the matter energy. So consciousness is not colored by matter and energy, is not colored by the gunas, it's not a phenomenon, it's the nominal. So, and the human mind is a phenomenon, okay? And as a phenomenon, it is fabricated by the energies, and which is matter, which is subtle matter, and the elements developing, and so on. So in its substantial nature, the mind is constantly changed, and we know that the self does not change. The mind is illuminating, but it's not steady, okay? And the mind is not continuous in the sense that the mind seems to disappear from time to time, such as in samadhi or deep sleep, and the self is always ever present. So there are several aspects of the mind that we can establish as different from the self. So the self is one and limitless, there is nothing beyond, and the mind is just one among many phenomena that we experience in nature. So in which way it's the same? So it is the same in the sense that the mind owns its existence to consciousness, and it shares the same feature of consciousness as Chit and as Sat. So the mind is Sat, Chit, and for the mind to acknowledge its limitless nature, it has to go into a certain level of understanding that although my mental capacities are limited, my original, most fundamental, essential nature is that limitless consciousness, always ever present. So the mind needs to understand its most fundamental, essential nature to claim its nature as limitless consciousness, although the mind remains limited as a mind, as an instrument to know the phenomena of as they appear in media, the subject-object phenomenon, duality. So the mind remains limited in its function as a knowing entity, okay? But it establishes its true nature, limitless consciousness, you understand? And the mind has the potential to claim and embrace its limitless nature, knowing that there are two aspects of its existence. One is the limit means by which I know phenomenal objects, which is limited, and one is my superior, free, limitless nature, which is consciousness, okay? So I am the instrument and I am the source of consciousness, which shines in this instrument and appears to become limited in all possible means. But in my true nature, I am also limitless, free, independent consciousness. Okay, I do not depend on the instrument of knowledge and the world of knowing object. So it's you just have these two aspects, two features of your human existence. And then the individual can say, no, the mind is consciousness in its most essential, fundamental nature. And I somehow choose to identify myself as my original nature, fundamental nature, which is limitless beyond time and space. So you do that, and you do that, and you do that until something happens. And then that assessment, that knowledge, that understanding it goes beyond the level of intellectual knowledge, understanding, and becomes what we call a paroksha jnana, which is a clear, direct, and immediate certainty of knowledge in regards to my superior nature, which, by the way, is my real nature. You understand? Nature is that without which something is not that thing. You understand? So my nature is consciousness. My nature is Satchitananda, is existence of non-dual nature. So why not to claim that which is my my true nature, essential nature, as consciousness? So therefore the mind is also consciousness, is also original limitless consciousness. But as an instrument of knowledge and experience, it takes attributes and qualities and properties that limits that body-mind complex. You understand? So it's just a question of us to understand my Mithya nature and my Satya nature, and making up our mind and establish this identity until the identity becomes hard and fast, as James likes to put, free, adultless knowledge in regards to my true nature. Absolute consciousness and space resemble each other in being perfect, infinite, subtle, pure, unbounded, formless, immanent in all, yet undefiled within and without. So here the author starts bringing the analogy of space is consciousness. Paramarthananda often says space-like consciousness. So space-like consciousness means to say that there are many features of space which are similar, which are like the features of consciousness. All pervasive, it does not change. Things are superimposed on space, they are superimposed in consciousness. There are several similarities. It's the most subtle, it is formless, it's colorless, it's immanent in all pervasive, undefiled. So there are all these features of space which are identical. But as we know, there is something which is fundamentally different. So consciousness is self-conscious, self-luminous, and the space is just energy. Space is the first manifestation brought about by the power of Maya. But those analogies are present so that we can better understand the features of our true nature, okay? So space differs on it only by being insentient. So if space is insentient and the self is the only source of sentience, we can never say that the self is space and space is the self, unless we resolve those contradictions, okay? Because one is sentient and the other is insentient. How you can say, because now the author goes about saying, in fact, the conscious self is space. Yeah, a huge contradiction. This is a non-Vedantic statement. So this being so, they are no different from one another. Meaning to say, the self is no different from space, and space is no different from the self. Okay, which needs to be understood, because although the space resolves itself into the self, consciousness does not resolve itself in space. Space is a manifestation, the subtlest, most subtle manifestation of Mr. Maya. Yeah? So therefore, we have to be careful with this statement. Space is self and self is space. But the same way that we say that the mind is limitless consciousness, reflect consciousness is original limitless consciousness. No? We can say that space is the self. But again, we cannot say that the self is space, because the self is a sentient principle and space is matter energy. And then it says, it is the ignorant who see the self as space alone owing to the delusion. The ignorant is going to say the self is the space, is the emptiness, the void, okay, nothingness. So it's the ignorant who see the self as space alone and only space, owing to their delusion, just as the owls find darkness in dazzling sunlight. The wise, however, find in space the self as well. So he's saying here that the ignorant is going to see the void, yeah, the space. And then you say the space is the self, but he does not see the self as the space. He says that the wise must see both, the self as space and the space as the self, okay? Just as the owls find darkness in dazzling sunlight. So there is something obstructing that vision, the same way the sunlight obstructs the vision of that bird, okay? And that is a video on Maya. But this talk of the ignorant sees the self as the void, as space, okay? We understand that. No, it is a superimposition. We are looking for the self. We hit the space or emptiness or the void, and then we believe that that is the self. But that is ignorance. So we should see that not as the self, but the self encompassing, embracing everything, because everything is but a superimposition occurring in the self and resolved as the self, which is the mirror or the screen on which all of these are superimposed, or the light that illumines and reveals all this universe. No? The wise, however, find in space the self, the conscious intelligence, her transcendental majesty in stainless and self-contained, irradiates diversity in herself like an individual in a state of dream. So consciousness, which is pure, one without a second, and containing existence and consciousness, irradiates diversity every time Maya comes into operation. It irradiates diversity within itself, like an individual in the state of a dream. So these analogies, they are important for us to see the parallel between the dream state and the wakeful state, okay? So consciousness, by the power of Maya, projects these realities, the same way the individual mind projects the dream state, which is this wakeful state recycled, meaning to say the impressions we collect from the wakeful state objects. So we have this diversity of physical material objects in the Vyavaharika, and then we interact, and somehow our causal memory system and the conscious as well, subtle memory system, collects impressions. And then those impressions have the power to project themselves as the dream state. So there is a power that does that in the case of the mind, and there is another power, which is the Maya Shakti, that does that, project the entire universe in which the Jivatmas also are included. So the diversity in all these Namarupas, meaning to say human jivas, animal jivas, and all other phenomena does not delude the self in its purity, but does delude the jiva atma, the ego. So the reflected consciousness is going to be deluded by the superimposition or projection made or done by Maya Shakti, and will take the plurality of all Namarupas of the universe to be real and to contain intrinsic value and so on. So the deluded is going to fall for the trick of Maya, this projection, you know. We don't fall for the trick of Nidra Shakti producing the dream world. When we come out of the dream world, we look and we say, no, it was not real. But we fall for the projection of the macrocosmic mind. Okay, the macrocosmic mind projects this universe, holds it with the help of all Jivatmas, working to keep it in place. And Jivatma is deluded. The dreamer in the dream is deluded as well. So there is also parallel there. The dreamer is as deluded as we are here. There is a power that's projecting these perceptions, this duality, knower and non. But consciousness, again, another feature of consciousness, is not deluded by this, by the power of mind. Maya does not delude the self in its knowingness, purity, self-conscious, self-contained existence. But the poor Jivatma, the egos, they are easily deluded. And why are the egos so easily deluded? I don't know. I mean, this reminds me of that conversation we had with Lena, saying, so, and is Ishvara deluded as well? No, Ishvara is not deluded. Okay, is consciousness deluded? No, consciousness is something altogether belonging to Satya. Ishvara is already a modification of consciousness to produce pure, limitless knowledge and intelligence. And my take is that Ishvara is not deluded by anything, because Ishvara is pure knowledge, pure consciousness, and manifests as pure sattva. It's going to pass on this chit nature of Brahman to the Jiva Atmas. So if it has this direct connection with Brahman, so that it can concede this human intelligence, this sattva guna, operating this clear mind in certain moments or case in the Jiva Atma, it can only be self-conscious. It can only be, self-knowing. So my take is Ishvara, and several passages of our text say it is self-known, self-realized, and self-luminous. And why? Because all knowledge, all knowingness, ability comes from pure sattva guna. So if Ishvara, if the very body, the very fabric of Ishvara is pure knowledge, so it must be self-knowing. It must know anything about Mithya. So it can hold Mithya into place, because it has the knowledge of all universe, past, present, future. But it's also know its true nature as consciousness. Why? If the poor Jiva can get to this knowledge of its true nature, the nature of everything as pure, limitless consciousness, how can Ishvara not know that? Our difficulty is that Ishvara is not a big Jiva, but the scriptures say it's self-known, it's self-realized. It knows its true nature, and it knows the nature of everything as Brahman, Satchitananda. And that makes sense, because we get just a little bit of that sattva guna, and that alone is enough, with the help of the scriptures, to allow us to self-realize our true nature. So Ishvara must be self-realized. Ishvara must be the all-knowing, because it holds this universe in place through its intelligent structure of laws and principles. So, but it's different from the jiva. But how about consciousness? Consciousness is one without a second. It is self-contained. It's the only source there is of Satchitananda, or Satchit. And it produces diversity. And in the dream and in the wakeful state. But consciousness as well as Ishvara, Brahman as well as Ishvara is not deluded by Maya, So that brings us into a very nice philosophical discussion. Who is the boss here? Is it Maya or Ishvara? Who is controlling whom? So is Ishvara controlling Maya or Maya controlling Ishvara? My take is that they are two sides of the same coin. A certain power which not only produce pure sattva guna intelligence, but it requires that intelligence to begin with to pull this magic mysterious show called the universe, to produce this universe. But the poor jivas, they are deluded, and we know that. But consciousness, the absolute, remains always aware, immutably aware. She appears mutable to her own creatures, just as a magician beguiles the audience with its tricks, but remains himself undeceived. That's a nice analogy. The magician is tricking everybody, but he is not tricked by his own trick. So Maya is tricking everybody and is not deluded. He's having a good laughter with him, and having a good time with Ishvara. And on the other hand, she appears immutable to the Jivatma. The Jivatma suggests that the self, which is one without a second, perfect, never change, never doing anything, appears as the mind, the mutable mind. To the creatures, to her own creatures, the self appears as limited and a flux of changing phenomena. And just as the magician beguiles the audience, which is strict but remains undeceived by the same tricks. So consciousness, Brahman, is aware and remains always self-aware. The fact is the only source of awareness or consciousness. Why? Because awareness is its nature. Awareness is the nature of Brahman, so it must be self-aware. The same way Ishvara, and the nature of Ishvara is pure knowledge, so it must be self-knowing, self-recognized, self-realized. So something that is the very nature is awareness cannot help but be self-aware at the same time. I am awareness, I am consciousness, I am, lending consciousness to all my jivas, humans and non-human jivas. So my nature must be consciousness. And if I make even my jivas conscious beings, so I must be conscious. I must be aware, because awareness is my very nature that I'm lending to all living creatures. So because the nature of Brahman is awareness, it cannot help but be self-aware and lend awareness to all these creatures having the so-called subtle bodies. You became aware of your environment, So we don't know exactly how the animals experience this awareness, but we know how we experience. Unfortunately, we are aware of the environment, we are aware of the body, and we take the body to be our true self, unfortunately. So awareness is the nature of Brahman. Brahman cannot help but be self-aware. I mean, the same thing with the fire. The fire, the nature of the fire is light, for example. So just imagine something that is illuminating something. It must be self-luminous, and it must illumine itself because its nature is luminosity. It's lending luminosity to the world through the jiva minds. It must be the very source of luminosity, and it means to say it must be self-luminous. Just imagine to say, oh, poor fire, you know, a fire torch or something. It's illuminating everything, but it's in the dark. What? You know, it is self-luminous. It illumines itself because it's the very source of luminosity, illuminating our environment. Yeah? This consciousness, this awareness is light. One without a second light is the only source of light. Light of what? Light of consciousness. The ultimate light, the light, of the visible light we experience here. So this Tripura is the ultimate light, the ultimate pramana, as we say, is one without a second, and yet she appears divided to her own creature. So the very Jiva Atma is intelligent, I mean, not so intelligent, but anyhow, the best we got in this planet, you know. For the Jiva, the human Jiva Atmas, the self appears as plurality, diversities, as, you know, divided by so many apparent existing principles or objects. So the objects are superimposed in reality, and we see the objects as reality. She appears divided to the Jiva Atmas because of the veil of illusion. So, I mean, it's very difficult to really understand what the heck is this veil of illusion. Yeah? Why we see matter and namarupas and the universe, and we take it to be reality, and we miss out on the only reality as the light, which is allowing us to access the world and mistakenly take the world to be reality and discount the very reality, which is the light of consciousness shining in the human mind. So what the heck is this Maya? Why this Maya is said to be the veil of illusion? We don't know, but we know that we experience this on every level, not only on the philosophical level presented by the Upanishads, that tells us, which is counterintuitive, that the world is non-existent. It's just a superimposition. And furthermore, nothing contains intrinsic value here. So, and then we see, okay, so none of this, but somehow we all fell for the trick of Maya, and we all see the world as reality, and we miss out on the only reality, which is the light of the observer of the world. Okay? So why so? And then we can have some philosophical discussions, such as it was a mistake Ishwarajit forgot to bring the sixth sense by which Jivatmas could access one's true nature as the only reality, you know? But not really, because Ishwara through the scriptures to all of us so that we could have access to this knowledge, self-knowledge. The scriptures is the means, is the pramana to gain this understand, to overcome this veil of illusion or delusion. But scientifically, we can look into it and see what people say out there, and there are all kinds of opinions, because people believe that the human mind is the brain, because they superimpose the mind on the brain as the brain, you know, not to understand that the brain is just a muscle, it's just a part of the physical body, is a mechanism that allows the mind to access the world of phenomenal object. So you need a brain, you need that instrument as well. But the mind accesses also other phenomena without the brain in deep sleep. The brain is totally relaxed, there is no mental activity, and yet now the mind accesses the dream world, so to speak. Oh no, because some people, they are so intelligent, they used 15% of the brain capacity. Oh, some genius may use 20, 30, and then we have to work on the brain to implant some things there to activate the brain so that we can be more intelligent, use more the brain. So what? Even the people who supposedly was extremely intelligent, using 20, 30, or howsoever portion of the brain neural connections or whatever, still they were as ignorant, deluded by Maya, fascinated to go and see reality and look for reality in the phenomenal world of object, and still missing out on the only reality, which is the light of consciousness, which is very activated, looking for reality in the unreal world. So Maya is going to deceive everybody. It is a mystery, this veil of illusion, but it appears to be a tendency to look out for happiness, a tendency to look out for reality, a tendency to look out for the truth, look out for the peace. Our instruments of knowledge are all outwardly turned, and somehow it takes a lot of maturity to understand that none of these 5 senses plus the mind are going to find happiness in the world. Sense perception and knowledge through the sense perception is not going to produce the happiness and satisfaction which lies within the very nature of the mind, but the mind needs another pramana to access this knowledge, okay? And that is overcoming the veil of illusion. It seems to be related to extroversion, mental extroversion, and it seems that we were designed that way, you understand? And some people are going to say, oh yes, but some people, they have some psychic abilities, and then they have access to all these subtle realms of reality, and then they go into the esoteric mystical realms, and they believe that there they are going to find reality. No, same mistake. You understand? You go there, you're going to find more mithya, subtle mithya. So that's not the way. Oh, but there things are going to be better. Okay. But in any case, how long you're going to enjoy your punya credit in one of these lockers now? We're going to develop some credit, and then we're going to exhaust them. And then where are we going to gain more credit? Credit seems to be possible to be gained here in the realm of demonstration, the physical realm on which, everybody is deceived, mostly deceived by the veil of ignorance, to the extent of taking this civilization of ours through this dense Kali Yuga that we live nowadays, total dense ignorance, everybody deluded by mind, everybody become materialist and wanting to find God in matter, or wanting to do a better job than God himself. Just as the musicians tricks, deludes the audience alone, but does not delude himself, so also Maya affects the creatures, but does not affect the creator. Oh, here comes Ishwara, the creator. Ali. So Maya affects the creatures, but not the creator. When the individuals are held in the meshes of Maya, they see diversity. And also they discuss Maya. I don't know exactly what was the pointer here, but to say that they are caught up, held in the mesh of Maya. They see diversity, and they even philosophically discuss Maya as a power that created it. But as long as I discuss about Maya, but we don't access the fact that Maya and its projections are unreal, if we don't come to that final conclusion, it does not have to discuss about Maya and to become a Maya philosopher, the people who understands that there is a power, an invisible power called Maya, and let's try to understand it. Okay, now I understand Maya, and yet I understand that the world is, they say that it's a trick, but it's real, because I can't go beyond the hard and fast mistaken knowledge that the world, the physical material universe is real. If you guys have any other take on this last phrase, they see diversity and they also discuss Maya. This Maya is the dynamic aspect of the latent self-sufficiency of the supreme consciousness, and it is unfailing and makes no failure. It's powerful, and is that what it means?
I think here what it's meaning is it's ever present.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what I believe it's meaning.
This Maya is a dynamic aspect of the supreme consciousness, the supreme Brahman, and it is unfailing, always present. Yes, Maya is beginningless. Ishvara is beginningless, and actually Jiva is also beginningless. Everything exists without a beginning, because something that is not real can never begin somewhere and end somewhere else. See how yogis, shamans, and magicians remain confident and sure of its power without revealing themselves, and yet play upon the imagination of others, seeking to achieve the impossible. So what is the impossible here? So the magicians are there. Some yogis with certain siddhi powers are there. And they are so confident of the veil of ignorance operating in the mind of human beings that they present their tricks fully confident that nobody is going to understand the falsity of what is being performed. Yet they play upon the imagination of others, seeking to achieve the impossible. So the audience is there trying to achieve a clear understanding of something that is impossible. You put a woman in a box, and then you open the box and the woman disappeared on the stage. This is impossible. And how can I understand that? The imagination of others, tricked by these powers. Division, such as the power produced by Maya, division in the absolute consciousness amounts to the contraction within particular limits under the guise of the ego, which is usually termed imperfection or termed ignorance. So now, this plurality and diversity of objects that's present here as divisions in consciousness. Consciousness is all pervasive, and then all these objects are going to create divisions. The same way we have a division between the space we see in a pot and the space outside of a pot. We know that the space is pervading the walls of the pot, but it appears that there are divisions in space, and we have seen consciousness being in analogy equated to space. So division in consciousness amounts to a contraction which appears within the human mind and guise of the ego, under the guise of the ego. The human mind, it is interesting because the human mind, under the guise of the ego, which is synonymous here of ignorance, you know, is going to produce, superimpose those divisions, those separations. What is the separation? So I see Lynn and I see Philip, and I see them different. I don't see them as mere superimposition in consciousness. Both are consciousness, but different namarupas superimposed by the power of Maya on consciousness, consciousness being all pervasive. So it's this contraction is produced by the ego under the spell of ignorance, because the ego, it must be totally identified with the body, name, form, in order to see other bodies and take those bodies to be reality, you understand? And infinite diversities of namarupas is seen by the ego. The moment that the ego defines itself as the body, immediately it projects, consciously or unconsciously projects space and time. Because if I take myself to the body and then I see the body of Lynn there, and immediately there is a space which involves a time to reach Lynn, you understand? And then every object is going to create this space-time dimension because of my certainty, my conviction that I am the body. Just imagine that if we were born with a mind that sees the body without being deluded, okay? And then you see everything as non-dual consciousness, and you never fall for the belief of I am the body and time and space is real. This dimension is real. Because you need to see objects to see, okay, I see an object, this object is a byproduct of the collective mind, impressions based on desires and aversions towards different configurations produced by Maya Ishwara. And then I will have contact with all these different objects of experience. And I'm going to establish a sense of time and space. For as we know, when we contact a good object of experience, time seems to pass faster. And then if you were being tortured, as an example, time seems to be eternal. All of that is based on humans' mind, ego, deluded by Maya, who begins its delusion from the fundamental delusion, which is, I am the body. This body, I'm not the Philippe body. I don't make that confusion. And I can't see consciousness, non-dual consciousness as the only reality. This division is produced by the ego under the spell of Maya, which is ignorance, avidya. It's termed as well as imperfection, yes. In this manner, Bhagava has the absolute consciousness invests its own pure, independent self with ignorance and seems to be iridescent with its different entities. You see here, he used the famous word, seems. So, in this manner, consciousness, Brahman, somehow fell for Maya, apparent fell for Maya, invested its own pure, free, limitless, independent existence with ignorance, also becoming the jivas. And apparently become ignorance, apparently investing itself with ignorance, and apparently to become iridescent with its different entities. So this is another pointer to the fact that Jiva-Atma enjoys the same nature as Paramatma. You see, Paramatma, the absolute conscious existence, invested its own pure, limitless, independent self with ignorance, and seems to be iridescent with the tricks of Maya, different people, things, circumstances, and all objects of the universe. So Jiva-Atma fundamentally, like even the inert beings or configurations produced by Maheshwara, they are fundamentally, they are the self, they are Brahman, they are consciousness. But a rock, a mountain can never reach or access that knowledge. Somehow the ignorant Jiva-Atma needs to work its way to purify until one comes to that knowledge. Otherwise, one remains now identified as Namarupas, and that gives tremendous suffering and anxiety to the living creatures, especially the human living creatures, because we are subject to not only physical but psychological pain, suffering. The very notion of our impermanent nature as the body produce the illness of samsara, those uncomfortable feelings and emotions that we try to avoid, to suppress by running and chasing objects, or just running for the sake of having no time to acknowledge this pain inherent to the unconscious belief that I am the body, and I'm bound by time above all. Hence, the identity of space with the self is not apparent to be learned, because they are incapable of investigating the self with a steady mind, for the mind is diverted by its inherent dispositions to move outward. Hence, the identity of space with the self. So the Jiva-Atmas cannot really identify the self as space or emptiness, or again, the space here needs to be understood as the ground on which Maya superimpose all objects of the universe. I mean, we know space is conscious. Is similar to consciousness in very ways, the space-like consciousness, as Paramarthananda puts. But space is not consciousness. A consciousness is not space. Space is the first modification happening, or the second, or the third. The first modification is Maheshwara, and then the elements are going to come. So, but space is very close to the self. But the ignorant jivas cannot see space or emptiness, which is the container accommodating the universe within itself. We need space as a container to accommodate things. We have a kitchen cupboard to accommodate some things, so it needs to have some space. Space has this incredible feature, which is accommodating the universe. And consciousness is the space of this space, because consciousness accommodates space and all other denser objects. So the people which are self-ignorant, the people deluded by the tricks of Maya, can never learn that the identity of space with the self, meaning to say the space is the self, and it's the closest phenomenal experience that you can have to have a hint of your true nature as the self. That's why people very often confuse Nirvikalpa Samadhi with the self, the emptiness, the space of Nirvikalpa Samadhi as the self. The identity of space with the self is not understood by those under the spell of Maya, because they cannot search for the self with a steady mind. And why? Because the mind is under the spell of avidya and is diverted by its inherent dispositions of extroversion, of looking for things outside to resolve itself. And when we come to spirituality, we want to find things inside, but not realize that it's still outside. Understand? So what is the space? So space, there is space, the physical outside space of the wakeful state, and there is the space, the mental space that often we look for in deep meditation, a space of emptiness, nothingness, in which there are no subtle objects. What are the subtle objects? The subtle objects are thoughts in respect to object. So we can go in to look for that space, subtle space, which is similar to the outer space. It's just, a replica, or actually it comes from the causal to the subtle and manifests as the outer space. But space is something, and we will be able to look for the self first in the physical material world of objects, and then in the inner world. And then we don't understand that the space is as far as we can go to experience emptiness. And still, that misconception, that confusion is not going to be solved, because one needs a steady mind. And the steady mind is not a mind absolutely empty from all kinds of thoughts. We need a steady mind, a sattvic mind, to engage into those Vedantic Upanishadic thoughts, which are going to reveal the true nature of the mind as Satchitananda. But the mind cannot do that unless it purifies its tendencies, which are derived by extroversion. So extroversion of the mind is the bottom line. It's what sustains this ignorance. Okay, the mind is feeling that is suffering the thickness of samsara, and it's uncomfortable, and it's always trying to find a solution by doing something or gaining something from the world out there. So by doing that, it develops tendencies of going for, and other tendencies which are related to tamoguna, of being frustrated and irritated by having those desires obstructed. So rajas and tamas are unavoidable as a byproduct of this extroversion or disposition to go outwardly to look for resolution or solution or peace. So that is the whole trick. It seems to be a perversion of Maheshwara. Why had them make it so difficult for us here to have it? But we have to remember, we are here. If we are here, it's because this is our school. I don't know. There may be other planets where people have much more sattva and they are much more wise. I don't discard that possibility. You understand? But we are here. That far we know. We are here. So, and then this is what we deserve. And we have to learn from here. And we have the merits of coming in contact with these scriptures, this revealed knowledge. And then we have to work from here. And what a bless to have these scriptures revealed to us. so that we can stop doing what I often call in my Brazilian group the impossible mission, which is trying to find reality in the world of object, trying to find happiness, true happiness out there. So that is what's going to turn the mind inwardly. And inwardly is a good term in that sense, because you stop going out and then you try to bring your mind to the scriptures, and then as you try to close your eyes, and then you're going to find the world is imprinted in your mind as subtle mental, emotional, intellectual impressions, and then you're going to see your inner world until the mind calms down, and then the mind is going to be fit to engage the scriptures on self-inquiry and self-knowledge as suggested by the Upanishads. So it's quite a game. We better enjoy it, huh? Right? Okie doke. Everything is good, Philippe? Did you follow? Yeah?
Yes.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Thank you, my dear friends. And we meet again next Thursday. Everybody's good for Thursday? Yeah? Okay. Ishwara willing, we meet again this coming Thursday. Obrigado, Felipe. Namaste.
Thank you. Very nice satsang.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.